Welcome to the Collab. This is a production of the Church Multiplication Institute at Wesley Seminary. The Collab exists to encourage innovation, creativity, and experimentation in the multiplication space. We're bringing together the best of those who are doing, trying, finding, and failing. We aren't just talking about what has worked in church multiplication. We're experimenting with what could be. Welcome to the Collab. Let's get to work. I am so excited that you have joined us this morning. My name is Andy Merritt, and I help lead the Church Multiplication Institute at Wesley Seminary, and we are honored to have Dave Ferguson as our guest today. Those of you that have been engaged in the multiplication space will likely know Dave's name and have seen him on stage at Exponential or other events. But Dave, thank you so much for joining us. Can you take just a minute and introduce yourself to this crew?
Sure. Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Ed. And I noticed those categories. Do I fall in that last one, the failing category?
I think we've all got our moments.
Yeah. Let me introduce. Just what kind of 2-minute kind of intro here, real quick. I think I planted a church with a bunch of friends from college in the Chicago area, and by God's kindness, the church grew. We have locations across the city and the suburbs of Chicago. And in the last year, I apprenticed a new lead pastor after being there for 30 years. And I did speak there last Sunday. I speak there about 8 times a year. I'm still a founding pastor there. But I want to be really clear. I'm out of Ted's way. And honest to goodness, Ted Canaris and the team there are doing just a great job. And as I told him on Sunday, Sue and I could not be more proud or more excited about the future. So that's going really, really well. Out of that church, Community Christian Church in Chicago, we got to help start planting churches. Our first one was actually in Denver, and then after that in California, and then outside of Detroit, then Boston, and New York, and then Knoxville. And when we started planting enough of them, we just kind of gave it a name because we're making up stuff. We started calling it New Thing. And we went from not only reproducing churches, but we also started reproducing networks of churches. And we could talk about that a little bit if you want. That's when things really kind of took off for us. And over the course of about 20 years, just through relationships and God's kindness, we ended up being about 69 countries, and we got to help plant over 35,000 churches. And in the last, and then the third part, so there's kind of community and New Thing. The third part is Exponential. We started, buddy of mine, Todd, we took over this little conference called Exponential, had about 200 people that were a part of it. And over the last, 19 plus years now, it's just kind of continued to grow, and it's way, way more than a conference. And in the last year, I moved into the full-time, when I handed off the church, I moved into a full-time CEO role at Exponential, and we also had Exponential acquire New Thing. And probably the thing that gets me up every morning is what we call the 16% mission. We want to see 16% of all churches in the United States become reproducing or multiplying exactly the stuff that you guys are talking about and championing and attempting and failing like the rest of us at, is what kind of gets us up in the morning. We think if that happens, that is the key leverage point. That'll influence the whole of the church in the United States. And in time, you could walk into a church in Tampa, Florida, or New York City, or San Francisco, or Austin, Texas, and they'd be a church going like, oh, they're making disciple makers, they're reproducing leaders, and they're planting new churches. And that's kind of the dream, to make multiplication normative.
So, and I will just say, first of all, thank you for all of the work that you have done. Exponential. I have never been a huge conference person. Like, I know there's people, they're going to every conference they possibly can go. And it was about 10 years where a buddy was like, hey, we need to go to this Exponential thing. And I'm like, all right, so let's do it. And now it's the one that I just don't miss. And so thank you for your energy, your efforts. It's been transformative for our team. I want to talk about your book that you just released, Multiplier. So, sure. First of all, if you're joining us, if you have not gotten a copy of Dave's book, Multiplier, highly encourage it. Ed and I were talking before Dave was on here. We were saying these things without him there, but really think that this is going to become one of those new staples that we think that people that are engaged, not just in the multiplication space, but I think the church world as a whole, that this is a gift to the church. And so I want to encourage you to grab a copy.
And rip off the dust cover and break the binding.
I found out that Ed is a monster with his books. That was the one thing I learned before you got on here, Dave, is that he breaks the binding on his books when he starts reading them.
I bust them in half.
I'm just thrilled that somebody's actually reading it.
Take off the dust cover, bust them in half.
I have to say, Ed, that is the first time I've seen it without the cover, the jacket on it.
Yeah, I know.
That's serious.
You got to get
serious right there.
But seriously, Dave, thank you for leading by example and being a leader that I look up to and deeply respect. And the authenticity just bleeds off the pages. And so really appreciate you sharing your journey with everyone else and being a mentor to thousands. So I appreciate your leadership there. And this is a gift. This book is a gift to the church. And I think it's going to be one of those, like, hey, when you're discipling, raising up leaders, it's like, here's a book you got to read, So great job.
Awesome. Thank you very much. That's kind.
Dave, let's dive into Multiplier for a few minutes. So one of the things that stuck out to me, you said, I want you to know that you can be relationally, mentally, and spiritually healthy and also make a significant kingdom impact. I remember, this was years ago, I went to a class at a mega church. It was taught by their staff, and I learned a lot. But when I got home, somebody asked me just off the cuff, that, hey, what did you learn? And the first thing that came to my mind, and it was a confidant, so I felt like I could say this in the moment. I said, I learned that I never want to work there. Was everybody that shared was burnt out. Everybody that shared talked about the sacrifices they were making on the home front and the late hours they were working. And somewhere along the lines, we've normalized always being tired. And I know that was true for me. You present in this book the idea of 4 gauges of a multiplier, and I started using them after the global conference personally, and they've been helpful to me. Can you just share in a nutshell the concept of those 4 gauges?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll back up a little bit, because kind of like your story too. I mean, I was in a small group of lead pastors, some of the largest churches in Chicago. And if any of you were at Exponential, you heard me talk about this. And we were together for 8 or 9 years. And, Andy and Ed, I mean, you'd know maybe all the names of the people in that group. It was a remarkable kind of group. The kind of group where, I mean, you bring a notepad of questions and you leave with a bunch of answers, and you're going, I mean, it was like a mentoring session every time we get together. And we'd get together, when I say small group, it's more like 4 or 5 times a year for like half a day. You just get there in the morning and then stick around for lunch into the afternoon. But if I tried to pull that group together today, I mean, half the seats would be empty. And there's a part of that, I mean, just breaks my heart, because I knew the people in that group well enough to know that none of them intended to end up where they ended up. And you guys work with church planners and young leaders enough. You never have a conversation with a young leader who goes like, oh, I hope 15 years from now I end up 50 pounds overweight, divorced, and compromising my core convictions. And I call it, and in the book I call it drift. You end up someplace you never intended to be. And so there is a lot out there about emotionally healthy, which we need that. There's a lot out there about establishing rule of life. We need that. And then there's a lot out there also, like the kind of stuff we love to talk about, multiplication and church planning and leadership development and hero making, all that kind of stuff. And what I really tried to do in the book is going like, you don't have to make a choice. In fact, fundamentally, you're not supposed to make a choice. That actually healthy leaders are the ones who create the lasting impact. Because unfortunately, half the people in that group, I mean, not only did their impact end in that moment, but in some ways it was a detriment to some of the things they've done even before that. and really shattered a lot of people along the way. So, I mean, that's where we get to the what you're asking about, Andy, which are the RPMs or these gauges. So there's four gauges that I talk about in the book: the relational gauge, the physical gauge, the mental gauge, and the spiritual gauge. And again, we know each other well enough. One of the things that I try to do. Oh, there we go. We got a picture of it. One of the things I try to make things as simple as possible so you can actually do it in real life. And I want to hear, Andy, in a little bit here how it's going for you. Okay. And so basically this comes right from Luke chapter 2, verse 52. This is Jesus' own kind of leadership development growth plan. He grew in wisdom and stature and favor with God and man, relational, physical, mental, and spiritual. And what I encourage leaders to do is I say, and I know this sounds a little bit like an infomercial, but I'm convinced this is true. If you will just take 4 minutes a day, if you'll take 4 minutes a day, just 1 minute to prayerfully reflect on each of those gauges. If you'll do that, and then I would say, I'll add this, and find some time at least weekly or monthly to talk about it in community. This could be transformational. And honest to goodness, I won't mince words. It may save your butt. Because I think all of us, I feel like I know you guys well enough to go, hey, relationally, no, you want to stay married, you want to have a good family, physically, you'd like to be good stewards of this body, you'd like for it to last 85 years and not 55 years. Mentally, you don't want to have your thought life be somewhere that it shouldn't. You don't want to be filled with anxiety and stress in a disproportionate way. And spiritually, you want to be connected with God. So in some ways, I'm just kind of, so what's your plan? And what this does, and I'll do this, do you have the next slide too?
I don't, I'm sorry, no.
That's the gauges. No, you don't, I didn't think so. Here, I'll just show you, because we got this on video, right? Let me see if I can pull it up. This is mine from today, okay? So I've been lately kind of journaling on my iPad. I don't think there's anything I'm going to be embarrassed of here. Let me see if I can blow it up a little bit. So kind of like what you saw. Like, can you see it there? So those are my gauges: relational, physical, mental, spiritual. And let's see how I did. So relational today, it's at a 5. Actually, that's up a little bit because it was a 4 yesterday. And that's mostly because I went out on a date. I don't know if I really call it a date, but soon I went out to eat last night. And it was a really good conversation and hung out afterwards. So yeah, we're doing pretty good. Caleb, my son, was in for the weekend. We got to hang out. So it feels like it's headed in the right direction. Physically, it's a 3. That's because like last week I had a cold. You can still kind of hear it a little bit. I'm not feeling great, so I didn't get out and run yesterday. So that tells me there, okay, watch this because you're kind of drifting in the wrong direction.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no panic about this, but it's just like, no, if you do another week of those or a month of what you did the last few days, it's not going to be good because you won't run, blah, blah, blah. Mentally, it's 5. I'm doing pretty good. I feel like I'm on top of things, not feeling anxious or depressed, and my mind's in a good spot. Spiritually, it's a 4. It was a little lower than that because weirdly, even though I spoke last weekend at the Yellow Box, it took up so much time getting ready to do the talk that I like some of the personal disciplines around journaling and stuff I wasn't doing. And but then I've been back the last couple of days doing it again, so it's heading in the right direction. So and honest to goodness, now that sounded like a lot, but literally, and Andy, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. For me, I've gotten to the place where I can jot those down and just kind of prayerfully go like, okay, how am I doing? Think about yesterday, today. And it's the important thing is, I think, just reflecting on it, just asking the question. Like, the gauge is interesting for people like us who like to keep score. The numbers, I had a number in there. None of that really matters. Okay. What ultimately really actually matters is just you reflecting, going like, how am I doing? And then, okay, am I drifting and what do I need to do different? Yeah. And so I had a few things in there that I put in red. And I'm going, oh, here's some things I need to do different to take it to the next level. So for me, that's become kind of a rhythm and almost like a rule of life. And part of it goes back to this, and this is what I said at the very beginning of the book. You reproduce who you are and what you do. You reproduce who you are and what you do. And so, like, yeah, I would love to influence thousands of people if God would give me that opportunity. But the way I want to influence them in a way that also leads to whole person health, relationally, physically, mentally, and spiritually, to human flourishing. And I think by being intentional about that, it gives us the opportunity to be those kind of leaders. And I'll wrap with this. What I talk about it this way, and I talk about our Exponential team this way, we want to lead the Jesus mission the Jesus way. The Jesus mission the Jesus way. Because if you're leading in a way that's growing something, but it's killing your marriage or killing your family or killing you, I don't think that's the Jesus way. And I don't say that as a guilt trip. I'm just saying there's a better way. And I'm not saying you don't want to grow things. We do want to grow and multiply and all that kind of stuff, make an impact, but there's a better way of doing it.
Yeah. So I'll say,
Yeah,
I'm an old soul. I'm a paper journaler. And so I actually had a stamp made that has the gauges on it.
Seriously.
And so that at the beginning of each page, I just, I stamp it, and then I put in where I'm doing, and then what I've been using is
it's just the gauge, and then you put
the arrow. It's this little guy. Yeah, it's just an empty gauge. And I had them made for our team, everybody that went to Exponential with us. Because they had all been introduced to the concept, and I had them made for them. And then I put either a plus, a minus, or a 0 as to whether, like, has it gotten better from the day before, has it gotten worse, has it stayed the same? That's just been the system I've used. And I would say, similar to what you're saying, I think the biggest thing for me is it has helped me kind of arrest places that are slipping much more quickly, because I would slip physically for weeks before my body actually got bad enough that I was knocked on my keister. And now I go, oh, well, how am I doing? Or my mental state, and how are my emotions? How is my anxiety level? Spending that time. So I journal first thing in the morning. I sit down with my coffee, and this has just become a part of my rhythm now. And no, it's been really helpful.
How long does I'm just curious, because I know I kind of sell how long does it take you to do it though? And don't say 4 minutes, just the truth.
Oh, so I was somewhere between 3 and 5. You're probably right on where the first couple of times took a little bit longer, and then there are some days where I try to take a little bit more time, because I realize, oh, maybe I am just copying what the day before. Yeah. And so there's days where I'll invest a little bit more time, but it doesn't take a lot of time.
Have you gotten to the place where you have a group or anybody that you periodically kind of debrief with how you're doing?
I don't have that yet, no.
Well, and honestly too, because since I made the transition from community to Exponential, I'm not right now, this is not good. This is a confession. I'm not in a small group. And so I don't really have that either. And that was, I don't know if you noticed, one of the arrows, I put like a little red arrow for what I want to do different. That's one of the things that's got to change for me too. Because again, I don't want to underestimate Dave and Andy's ability to lie to ourselves.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. I do want to say this, because I know we've got a good amount of people that are joining us live. If you have questions that you want us to press into, feel free to drop those in the chat. Jess, I see you in there, and it's good to have you here. But if there are other people that are here that have questions you want to make sure we toss out.
Is where can we go to order the stamp?
Right.
Need to start a little Etsy company or something, Andy.
Right. little Etsy, yeah.
Actually, one of the things that's on
message me and I'll hook you up.
One of the things that's on the docket at Exponential is we do have, and I'll give people this. If you go to exponential.org/multiplier, we do have a digital check-in that you can use, and we'd love for you to begin to experiment with that. If you like Andy though, I think in the month of July, our content team is working on how we want to come up with an RPM's journal. Much like, not as clever as the stamp, but it would still be like a journal that you could order that would actually have that framework in there as a part of journaling every day.
Oh, that's cool.
That's
cool. It's funny. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Andy.
No, it was one of those things that was almost deceptively simple. When I read what you had written, I was like, man, but there's pieces like, why didn't somebody write this 20 years ago? Because they're so rudimentary, but so critical.
Well, and you know what? Here's the other thing too. I mean, in looking back too, and I don't, maybe Ed, you have some thoughts on this because you're reading the book. There's part of me that also goes like, I should have just made the book really, really, really short. Because I mean, it is. I mean, it's a like a real book. But I mean, maybe I should have just made it like you said, because it's not. It's at one level. I mean, I just explained it in 5 minutes, and then you kind of like, oh yeah, here's how it works. It's not that hard. So everybody who buys the book, if you have my permission, if you want to skip sections, just kind of like, okay, I got it, and go on to the next one, to the next one. You don't have to go through the whole thing if you think you got it.
Oh,
It's helpful context. Now, here's one of the things I think that's happening in this is your ability to demonstrate to others, people that you're discipling, leading, wanting to disciple or influence at any level. It just in a simple way illustrates that you're a growing leader. You want to be a growing leader too. Like you have these areas that you want to continue exploring and continue pushing forward in. You're concerned about key areas like your marriage, your family, relationships, these meaningful things in life. And what's happening is people around you are watching and they're curious and they have that little, when Paul has this like Apostle Paul, right, has this little like, hey, imitate me as I'm imitating Christ type relationship. It's like there's something attractive about that human relationship and friendship that we have, that we see something that's like, wow, there's someone pursuing Christ, that's growing in Christ, wanting to be held accountable, wanting to push forward. And when people around see that, that's when the multiplication effect starts kicking in, because then they also take it on. They're like, I want to be like that too.
Yeah.
And then you've got something practical that you can start real simply, making disciples. Because I use these as an accountability relationship, so it's like, this is the key areas, but I think that's the thing that's happening. Not only are you staying a healthy multiplier, but it's like, it's the very thing that makes your life attractive so that other people would want to, do the same and explore what that means for their life. So it's pretty incredible all the way around.
And thanks for saying that. And that's very kind. But I mean, you've experienced that too, Ed, right?
Yeah.
And so this is not something that's relegated to me or to Ed. I mean, like all of us, there's what's going to happen, if you're looking at the next, and that's part of what I do when I talk about multiplier. I say, hey, I want to talk about the next 5, 10, 20, 40 years. And as those of you listening in, you think about the next 5, 10, 20, 40 years, your influence, if you are a healthy leader, is going to continue to grow.
Yeah.
And as it grows, you got to think about, okay, what do I want to reproduce? Both the who and the what, both the who and the how. And that's kind of what we're talking about in Multiplier.
Yeah. Let me ask you, Dave. So I mean, something that came to my mind as I was reading it, as I've been engaging with this, is the areas that I have the tendency to write off in my head really quickly, and to just move on from. So I'll give the physical gauge is an example for me, where I'll burn the candle at both ends. I will run myself just to the very edge of what I can handle. And then I've had a couple of times in ministry where the Lord has just knocked me on my backside because I had ignored my physical health. And that tends to be the one, at least in my experience, where pastors like we will hear people say, "Oh, you need to take care of your body," and we nod, but we nod while we're driving through Taco Bell, grabbing something on the way to the next meeting, right? Like
That's a Bell Grande.
Yeah.
And like, are there one or two things where? So you talk about the idea of the aggregation of marginal gains. And that idea of that, just what you can you just move 1%, move something 1%. When it comes to, I'm thinking the physical area specifically, but it could be any of these. Where have you found that you get the most bang for your buck when it comes to improving? And I'm thinking the physical area specifically, but it could be others.
I mean, obviously, the spirit. If you're going to kind of weight which gauge, the spiritual gauge is the most important. I mean. The Bible tells us, hey, without that, you will do nothing. You'll bear no fruit. So, but I would say after that, my experience at this point, and even I'm getting to talk to more people about this too, is I think what you described is not unusual. I think we do underestimate the physical gauge, because this is the container that holds everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And who was I just talking to? I was talking to it was a European leader, and we hung out together about a year ago, and he told me, he said, "Yeah, hey, I wanted you to know I lost 40 pounds since the last time we were together." And I was like, "Oh, that's awesome." And I said, "I'm just curious, how does that impact your leadership?" And what he said, the way I walk into a room is just different. I walk into a room with a different level of confidence, and I don't think. In some ways, I don't think that surprises any of us, but I think that's also true for us physically if we don't take care of ourselves. And what you spoke to is kind of this aggregation of marginal gains. So a little bit, it comes. There's a couple different places. There's a great story in there. I love the story about the British cycling team. But another place you go to too is, in Atomic Habits, James Clear talks about how identity actually is important before behaviors. And he tells this, you guys have heard the story, I think. He tells this great story about a guy who's overweight, and what he does is he literally drives to the gym, parks his car, walks in, doesn't do anything, walks back to his car and drives home. And he does that for a week. And part of it is because he wanted to shift the identity that I'm somebody who goes to the gym. And that's that aggregation of marginal gains. How do you begin to just tweak it a little bit? I'm somebody who goes to the gym. And then pretty soon, if you're somebody who goes to the gym, oh, guess what? And then I get on the treadmill. And I think that's what checking your RPMs, especially the physical gauge, it gives you an opportunity every day to go like, okay, how can I just move it just ever so much the needle in the right direction? And it could be something like, hey, you know what? Before I go to bed, before I get in bed, I already got my pajamas on. I'm going to do 10 push-ups. And you do 10 push-ups before you jump in bed, because you're like, no, I'm someone who, and when I wake up in the morning or when I go to bed at night, I do 10 push-ups. Or, I might be like, you just start. And for some of you, the practice of exercising, you take a walk around the block after dinner. Mm-hmm. And just incremental gains like that can make a really big difference. But I do think, particularly as Christian leaders, we vastly underestimate the physical side of who we are. And I think, like what you described, I think our motivations are good. We want it so badly, and I think a lot of times we want it for good reasons. And we can come back to this idea. But I think instead of working so hard, we should probably work less and multiply more. And I think there's a strategy there of not working more, but multiplying more, that actually equals a greater impact.
Yeah.
Because when you multiply, I think it gives you the ability to kind of rest and go like, okay, you know what? Quick story. Then I'll shut up and we'll move on. So 2 weeks ago, I'm in Long Beach, California. I was out there with Long Beach Church Collective, and then City to City SoCal. Two really terrific groups doing great stuff. One of the leaders that was there, was a guy named Matt Larson. Matt's a guy who did a leadership residency at Community probably 15 years ago. So he was going to plant a great church, and he would be a great communicator and a good leader, solid leader, but he didn't get the reproducing part at all, multiplying part at all. So he came, moved his whole family, came and hung out with us for a year, did a year-long leadership residency before he planted a church. So he goes back to Ventura, California, plants Anthem Church. In the last, 15 years, I think they've planted somewhere between 15 and 20 churches. Which is awesome. It's awesome. So here's the way I think about it. My little bit of investment in multiplying more there, even when I'm taking a day off in Chicago, that dude is still in Southern California planting churches. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And if you want to make an impact with your life, don't work more. And because I don't know how hard I would have had to work to make up for those kind of 20 churches. I probably couldn't have. But that one investment of multiplying more and kind of Bob Buford's "my fruit grows in other people's trees" kind of mindset, going like, oh, that's what you do. You don't work more, multiply more. And that also, I think, allows you to take better care of yourself.
Yeah.
You know,
go ahead, Ed.
yeah, I don't know if you were going to mention the question that just popped in there from a friend of ours, dealing with that specific topic you're talking about there, Dave.
Yeah.
But the individual's asking about, how do you get leaders to think beyond their personal relationship with Christ, and and to think multiplication, and to bring in that desire to impact and influence other people. And I always find it so interesting when Jesus called his first disciples.
Yep.
Right? He told them the end result. And it was, "Come follow me, and I'm going to make you into fishers of people." And so the end result wasn't like this, "You're going to become a great person. You're going to become a great leader. You're going to become a better husband, a better father, better this, that." I mean, it was about someone else from the very beginning, And so often, like, that's not the initial message you get a lot of times, right? Like, the initial message is, follow Christ so you can be a great person. Or even like holiness traditions, can emphasize just being holy is like the end result, and which is still important, but it wasn't Jesus's end result. It was a means to get to the end. And so I think that piece of, recognizing the initial calling, when you really deal with that, if Jesus was calling you right out of the gate, and preachers, if we're calling people right out of the gate, like, it's not about you from the beginning. It's going to be about you reaching somebody else, influencing somebody else. That changes your entire perspective and outlook. And I think that's what you get to the heart of it, is recognizing this personal growth isn't just for me. It is for someone else. And so I don't know if you have any additional thoughts on that.
Yeah,
that was intriguing to think, because we get so personal. It's like your personal relationship. And
I think you're making a great point here, Ed, because I think what we underestimate is, as leaders, we are culture creators. And again, you're going to reproduce who you are and what you do. So, example, and this was by accident. So when my daughter was born, I think it was in first grade, we started doing a daddy-daughter date every week. And when she was little, we would go to Dunkin' Donuts, and then later it was Caribou Coffee. And then when she was high school, it was actually Starbucks, because she worked there and we got a discount. And so but every week we would go out together, and I'd drop her off at school. And occasionally I'd put stuff on social media about it and that kind of stuff. What surprised me was then the number of dads at community in the church who started taking their kids out in the morning. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
And I wasn't trying to start a program where, hey, everybody, let's all date our kids, in particular our daughters or whatever. But again, as a leader, you reproduce who you are. And so it's kind of like, again, if you want the people in your church to be great dads, I mean, I'm not saying you have to be a great dad, but you're trying to be a great dad. And you're also being honest about where you're not. But you're putting in the effort so they see that. Or a husband, same thing. Or even, I think there's some value also, like I post sometimes about, I don't know, maybe it's bragging, maybe it's, I don't know, weird, but about running and stuff. But I want people to know, like, hey, I'm trying to take care of my body too. And I think that kind of stuff, you reproduce who you are. So I think you're absolutely right, Ed. There is almost for me, a subconscious part that is now just so deeply ingrained in who I am, that the things I'm doing, I am kind of doing both for me, but also I want it for the people at Exponential, the people at community, the people in my family, all those kinds of things. And you're going to do it one way or another. I had one leader come and tell me, a mentor of mine say, hey, if you don't like your church culture after like 3 or 4 years, it's your fault.
Yeah. And a story that just came to my mind along those lines. So Jess asked the question. One of the things he's specifically asked about is in military type transient areas. And I had a young man that I was discipling a couple of years ago, and I try to have like 1 or 2 guys each year that are my disciples, and that I'm trying to help them become disciples who will make disciples. And we went through an entire year together, meeting every week. He was one of my favorite guys. There was one Sunday night we were supposed to meet. I was out of town, so we were doing it via Zoom. And I looked at his camera and I'm like, dude, where are you? He had literally climbed on the roof of his house because his signal was so bad in his house, but he didn't want to miss the meeting. And I was like, what? That's amazing. Well, then we get done. And he's like, hey, I just need you to know I'm joining the Air Force. And I'll just be honest, like there was this piece of me that was like, oh man, like I was disappointed because I had invested all this time, and the Holy Spirit had to smack me in the head, because then, 6 months later, he calls me and he's stationed overseas, and he's like, hey, I'm having these spiritual conversations with my coworkers. I've got questions for you. And the Holy Spirit was like, what if you hadn't invested that time? Like now he's discipling people in places that you could never reach. And the Holy Spirit had to smack me around a little bit to help me have a healthier perspective.
No, I've had those experiences. That's exactly right. And I think you have to keep just kind of trusting Jesus, trusting God with that, and you keep investing in other people, and it will. I guarantee, just like you said, Andy, it'll surprise you. It'll surprise you. Like I didn't know Matt was going to start, 17, 18 churches in 15 years. But it turns out, wow, that was a good investment.
Yeah. I do want to kind of pause the conversation just for a moment, and I hate commercial breaks, but I want to take a small commercial break because something Dave mentioned at the beginning is that Exponential is not just a conference. There's so many more resources that they offer to the church, and one of those is their learning communities. And the learning communities meet at 3 locations over the course of a year, and you're learning from some of the best practitioners that are out there. And Wesley Seminary has partnered with Exponential in those learning communities, and we're offering a graduate certificate in multiplication, where the first class will be together, and we'll be together down in Indiana for a week, but the other 3 are all in partnership with those learning communities. So we'll be going, I think, this year to Wilmore, Kentucky, Austin, Texas, and then I think we're down in Illinois. And I want to encourage you. I posted a link to information about that certificate, and so I would love. If you want to get more information, you can message me, message Ed, but also you can just click there and get more information. So Dave, I have we just talked about physical health, so this is probably not the best question to ask next, but Stephen Colbert has a question that he likes to ask that I love. What's the best sandwich?
The best sandwich?
The best sandwich.
I think the best sandwich is a bacon, lettuce, tomato sandwich in the summer. If you got, I mean, like you get really good thick bacon and a really great tomato and some lettuce there with just a little nice layer of mayonnaise and not too much, but just right. And then toasted bread. Yeah. That is the best sandwich there is.
All right. I can get behind that.
I like it.
Ed, what about you, man? What's your
Well,
go-to?
my physical RPMs are so high right now. I'm gonna go with the Unwich from Jimmy John's. No, it's wrapped in lettuce, but sometimes I do that. So just stay away from the breads. But man, I gotta go just old school toasted ham and cheese with a good ham.
Yeah.
Italian bread, if I'm feeling the bread.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, a trip to Chicago. If you a trip to Chicago, you get a Portillo's, beef sandwich. That's pretty good too, with 2 gravies on the side. That's not too bad.
So I feel like I might get in trouble. I don't know if we've got anyone here from Pittsburgh, but my son's in college in Pittsburgh, and we went to visit him, and everyone had talked about Primanti Brothers as this big thing, and I had it built up in my mind. And they do a pastrami sandwich where they put the fries on the sandwich, and I was like, oh, this will be great. And then I got it, and I didn't like it, and I felt really bad. I'm like, oh, I don't know if they're going to kick me out of the city or not, but I like a good Reuben. Like if you get, there used to be a place here in Jackson, and it's closed now, but especially around St. Patrick's Day, they would make Reubens as their specialty sandwich. Oh, yeah. And yeah.
That could be good. I like that. I'm not sure about the fries on my sandwich either. I don't know. I have to go to Pittsburgh and check this out.
Yeah, well, it made the fries soggy. Like on their own, they were nice and crisp, but it made them soggy, and then the sandwich was just mushy. And so, but yeah, you'll have to try it. Let me know. Okay. So I want to shift back. Another quote that stuck out from Multiplier was, only those who have been brave enough to ride their own monsters of anger and greed, jealousy and narcissism, fear and violence, all the way down to the bottom, will find a truer energy with which to lead. And I remember it was about 4 years into our planting journey, and I was riding the roller coaster. My identity was tied into my sense of success or failure with our plant. And like I felt either good about myself or bad about myself on Monday morning, entirely based on how many people were there, and there weren't many people there. So I spent a lot of Mondays just at the bottom of the barrel, and the Lord had to shake some things loose in me, and some of it were these the monsters of jealousy of other people and how they were doing, and of my idea that this was my church and that I was the one making it happen, I think was something he really had to shake in me as well. I think I was unaware of those monsters in myself until then, and they still crop up. Like, this was not a one and done, slayed the monster and it's gone kind of thing. But what suggestions do you have for leaders to help us identify and face those monsters in our lives?
Well, I mean, Andy, I don't think you're alone on that one. I mean, I think probably every church planner knows the feeling of, if you come in when the first song starts and you're sitting in the front row, and then somewhere about the start of the second song, you look over your head to go like, who's there? And it's kind of like it's this weird, you try not to make it an evaluation of your identity, but it is hard not to. And even like and confession too, like when we planted Community, we had this great volunteer group that made up our band when we first started, but they all had real jobs, and I had them doing Sunday, I had them doing a weekend service and a midweek service, plus doing setup and tear down both. And I just like killed. In fact, before the year was up, our whole band quit because I was driving them that hard. And so that was not from a place of, health at all. So yeah, I think so. Okay, so what do you do about these kind of things? These kind of drives that get out of control that you need to get back under control or acknowledge. As any age as a leader, but particularly as a young leader, if you can begin to ask for feedback, if you just solicit feedback, and I would say from your spouse, because they will. I'm fortunate. I married Sue, and she is not the least bit afraid of me. And will tell me the truth, and that has been a huge help. But I think to be intentional about soliciting feedback from your spouse, if you do have a staff, from your staff, from key volunteers, friends, people in your small group, be proactive and tell them that you want their feedback. I think that's critical if you can do that, and to create that kind of environment. I'd say secondly, if you could then also make sure you're living in communities so that there's a rhythm, to where, hey, here's a place where I can get that feedback from my staff, where I can get that feedback from the people in my small group. I think that's really helpful. And maybe thirdly, I would say almost just particularly for church leaders, if you're in a staff role or a senior leader role, I would say just the same way you see a doctor, see a counselor or a spiritual director. Just kind of like for a checkup, if nothing else. It doesn't mean you have to go every week, but just kind of like so that you have somebody who's there and you can decide if it needs to be quarterly or twice a year or even annually, just so there's somebody you can go to, and that you regularly, there's some rhythm to going to them, so you're talking about some of those kind of things in case you do need something that's more intensive. I think if you could do those three things, I think that would go a long, long way.
Yeah. Ed, can I just ask you? And I didn't tee you up for this, but you have planted churches. You've helped people plant churches. Like, what have you found that helps people wrestle these things to the ground?
Well, I love what Dave mentioned there. That's really helpful and practical, and I would recommend that too. Early in my ministry life, I was the type that was like, counseling's for weak people, and you're a weak leader if you need counseling, was just the way it was in my thought process, and completely changed that after I experienced burnout and had to go through this deep healing process. And truly, I mean, it was probably, other than my salvation, I mean, that was like the most transformational time period I've ever been through. And I describe it as, in my healing process, God made me a new man. And I did feel, in a sense, reborn. And so I can relate with all those intense feelings. And then this deep joy came from processing with others these deeper emotions that I would, for all my family history reasons, I would shove down, I would push away, I wouldn't talk about them, put them under the rug, hopefully they just go away, and now I have this deep appreciation and this love, this openness. I want to talk about it, and then I think that's really one of the most helpful things is when you're working with leaders, it's got to be self-realized, because you can't just come straight out,
Good.
With this kind of, you've got issues, people don't respond well that way. So it's helping people to come to the self-realization that there are these areas that need growth. And so it's asking the questions. It's learning how to ask good questions with people, helping them process, sharing your own vulnerabilities in your life that may expose or open up doors for conversation. And even just asking, you know, like, why is that feeling there? You know, I mean, dealing with some of those deep rooted things. I mean, you mentioned the jealousy one. Huh. I mean, who doesn't experience that, right? But let's, like, you know, being able to talk about that openly, that just reveals like some deep roots. Like, where does that come from? Why is that root of jealousy there? You know, and once you shine light on it and expose it, then it's like, now we can get in there, and the Holy Spirit will get in there and work and do some incredible things that transforms people from the inside out. And I think that for me, that's some of the most fun conversations that you get to have with people that you're discipling, because it's like all these ahas just start going off. And you know, it's not easy.
And I don't know if you're this way, Ed, or not, but like, if someone asks me, like, how am I feeling? Like, I can literally feel my eyes roll up and go, like, I think I feel. Like, I have to think about how I feel. Totally. And so I get some grief on this one, but like, you know, you've seen the feeling wheel. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, I know. I know what you're talking about. Yep.
So there's like this. Just Google it. If anybody's listening, just Google feeling wheel. It'll probably come up on Etsy, and then you can make fun of me. But like, I have that in the back of my journal, because it takes these primary feelings, and then it takes you from the primary feelings to all these different secondary feelings. And it's like a diagnostic tool for people like me who think about how they feel. And so by looking at that, I can go like, oh, okay, I think, and I can look, that's how I'm actually feeling. And I, like, even in my journal, one of the things I do, and I'll write down, I am feeling ... because I have to stop to ask myself, like, how am I feeling today? Otherwise, I'll just run right past them.
Yeah. We've got another question that's in the chat here, and okay. Jess is asking a question about models and multiplication, and his question is just, are there times when maybe we get too focused on models? I guess, where does the idea of a model, having a very specific model, help when it comes to multiplication, and are there times when it maybe hinders? And Jess, if I'm misstating your question, feel free to push back and to redirect. But I know I found a lot of values in choosing what direction you're heading and helping people choose those things. Dave, what would be your thoughts when it comes to that question?
Around models and multiplication?
Yeah.
A couple thoughts come to mind. One is, let me start where I think models can be valuable, and then I'll go to how I think we ought to approach it as leaders. I think models can be really valuable if you're a multi-site church. If you're a multi-site church, you're trying to figure out how to multiply locations. There's probably some value in you figuring out, how do we do it around here? And let's kind of stick to that. Mm-hmm. Now, quick caveat, I encourage churches, to think both multi-site and church planting. But when you're going to start another site, it probably needs to be like, okay, what are the constants? Even at community, we had what we call the 10 campus constants. Here's the 10 things we all do. And that helps bring clarity to leaders, whether I want to plant a campus or I want to plant a church. So I think models can be very helpful for a multi-site. I think we just came out with a book called the Church Plant Atlas at Exponential, and we give a whole bunch of different models. I think that was helpful because as a young leader, there may be like, half dozen of them that you're going like, I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't know you could do that. And so models help give you, I think, paradigms and frameworks for new possibilities. So I think that's helpful. Here's where I would push against kind of models. I think our reproducing and multiplication needs to be focused on individual people and leaders. And I feel like if I'm investing in a leader, my job is to help release whatever God's dream is for that person. and they'll figure out and if they're a church planner, it might be micro, it might be macro, it might be meta. I don't care what it is, because I think we need all kinds of expressions to reach all kinds of people. And so I'm really focused on how do I invest in that person and release God's potential in them, and then help them figure out the model. So even when it comes to like multi-site or church planning, I would, like, let's say, Andy, you or someone on our team, part of the conversation would be, well, what's your dream? And you're going like, man, I love this church. I love the way we do these 10 constants. I would love to be a CP here. Is that possible? I said, well, let's see what we can do. Let's see what happens, and let's invest towards that. Or you might go like, you know what? I'm grateful for community, but I hate the logo and I want my own church. And you're like, great. Then let's don't waste time trying to, make you be a campus pastor. Let's invest in you. Let's get you out there, and we're going to get you started. We're going to help you find a network that can support you, all those kinds of things. So I focus on the leader more than the model.
That's good.
I did. So Dave mentioned something called the Church Plant Atlas, and I just posted a link to it. So Exponential, if you have not been on Exponential's website, specifically their resources, they have a ton of things that are there that are just free gifts to the church. And you can download a free copy of that Church Plant Atlas, and it is, I love you found examples from all across the theological spectrum and brought those to the table in that atlas. And it's great for processing through those things and seeing how other people are doing them. And so I encourage everybody, if you haven't taken a look at it,
across the theological spectrum, I think we would say they're probably all orthodox, but
yes, no, that's fair. Yeah. Sometimes, I'll just be honest, like as Wesleyans, we tend to play in our little corner of the universe, right? And think that, if you're Nazarene, Free Methodist, Wesleyan, we play with you, and then,
Yeah, there'll be a few outside of that, but yes.
Yeah,
but they all
absolutely
love Jesus and love the Bible.
Yes, absolutely. That's great clarification. We've only got 3 minutes left. And so I want to ask one last question. So you talk about relational health, and there was another quote that I just wanted to use. Your relational health is the single biggest predictor of whether your kingdom dream will actually multiply. And then you say, why? Because you can't sustain the mission alone. You and I must have friends on mission. That's one of those things that I wish Andy 20 years ago had really understood, that I spent so much energy developing programs and writing sermons and doing, all of the busy work of ministry, and not realizing the deep value of just relationship and how important that is for all of this. And I just wondered if you could speak to that for just a little bit. What are some common relational mistakes that you see pastors make, multipliers make, and how can we identify if we're making those right now?
Did you throw that to me or Ed?
Either one.
Oh.
Sorry, Dave, I was throwing that to you, but I'm happy to throw it to Ed.
Okay. My own experience, quickly, because I'm watching the clock. When we started reproducing not just churches, but also reproducing in networks, and when I use the term network, we think in terms of like a small group of pastors, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pastors who come together on a regular basis. How do we do that to help start new churches? When we began to put pastors into those smaller networks, 2 things happened that really kind of surprised us. One is we planted a lot more churches. That's when things really took off for us. But the second thing that happened, we also began to see it help it was good for their own spiritual health. And that's what I'm talking about. And really, this was a group, it was basically a small group who are what we call friends on mission. And I think all of us need that. I was listening to just a podcast this weekend, a Harvard prof who's an expert in happiness, and it won't surprise you, but basically happiness, probably the key factor in happiness, has to do with relationships. Yeah. And again, I think that's what we're looking for, relationships. And I kind of try to live this way. No matter how big your world gets, at some point in time, your world's going to get smaller and smaller and smaller, and it's going to be me and Sue and the kids and a few friends, some key important relationships. And what's going to really matter the most is what does God say about me and what do those people say about me? And Again, if you're talking about trying to be a healthy leader for the long run, you want to do life with friends on mission. It's a huge factor in your own kind of human flourishing or even happiness. And ultimately, I think that's what's going to matter to you kind of when it's all, when you've, had your 85, 90 years and you're done, that's what's going to matter most.
Ed, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
No, sir. That's excellent way to end right there.
Yeah. So, Dave, thank you. Thank you for investing in us, both in this space, but also through the work that you've done through Exponential. I have been changed because of the work that you and Exponential have done, and I know so many of my coworkers in mission have been as well. So I just want to thank you on behalf of all of us for what you do for Multipliers, and also for just taking the time with us this morning. So thank you.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me on, Andy. Thanks for what you're doing. Ed, thanks for what you're doing. We love the partnership with you guys in Exponential, and we are super grateful for the difference you guys are making.
Yep. Thank you, Dave.
All right.
See you around.
Thank you for joining us on the collab, and please check out. We've got a couple of links there. One for the multiplication certificate, another one for the Church Plan Atlas. And if you've got any questions about multiplication, again, if you would like to know more information about this effort we're doing, you can email me, andy.merritt@inwest.edu. I'll send that out to all of you, and as well as those links after we get done here. But thank you all for taking the time to join us. We hope you have a great rest of your day.